So you're interested in the state of Utah, whether you're visiting or perhaps you're even considering making the move to the Beehive State. In this video, I'm outlining the things that most people don't know unless they've been exposed to the state of Utah. And these are really interesting things that you're gonna wanna know, fun facts about my home state, the state of Utah. If we haven't met yet, my name is Scott Steele, and I absolutely love helping people discover all things Utah, including Utah real estate. So if that's you, you're in the right place, and consider subscribing because I post videos, multiple videos each and every single week about the state of Utah and what it's like living right here in the Beehive State. All right, with that said, let's get started. I've outlined 25 fun facts that you didn't know about the state of Utah. And the first point that I want to bring up is that Utah is the only state in the entire country where each and every county has part of a national forest in the county. So Utah has 29 counties overall, and every single one of them touches, or at least has part of a national forest right in the county. Pretty interesting. I don't think I've driven through every single one of these spots, but I do know that I've experienced probably most of it, so it's pretty cool. All right, moving on. Utah is home to the world's first Kentucky Fried Chicken. Right here in Salt Lake City, the very first Kentucky Fried Chicken was put right on Steele Street in South Salt Lake City, which is kind of interesting because you would never correlate Kentucky Fried Chicken with the state of Utah, but it's true. It's the very first location in the entire world. So if you're a big fan of Kentucky Fried Chicken, you might find a good home here in Salt Lake City. All right, next up, the Spiral Jetty. This is an earthwork type art piece in the Great Salt Lake, and it was created by Robert Smithson in 1970, and it's located on the northeastern shore of the Great Salt Lake. It's a really cool little art piece that you can actually go experience, and it almost looks unworldly if you've gotten footage from above, perhaps from a drone. It's really cool to experience at least once. I think it's cool, it's kind of interesting, and there's nothing else like it in the entire country. All right, next up on the list, I was actually downtown in Salt Lake City this past summer, and I met a bunch of strangers that were visiting from out of the state, from all over the country. And one of the things that people want to visit Utah is to experience the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir, located right here in Salt Lake City, is one of the oldest and most renowned choirs in all of North America. And they've been invited to sing and to perform in all sorts of settings all across the world. So if that's kind of your thing, you might want to take a visit to Temple Square and go check out the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, perhaps in the Tabernacle, perhaps somewhere else. But it's really kind of an awe-inspiring experience to hear that choir. It's really quite powerful. All right, next up on the list is the nickname for the state of Utah is the Beehive State, which symbolizes industriousness as well as cooperative effort, just like honeybees. And it's pretty cool because that culture is really baked in to our culture here in Utah. And I think it's safe to say that we are workers here in the state of Utah. And I love how much our nickname of the Beehive State really helps identify with who we are. In fact, it's almost kind of like a mission statement for the state of Utah and for Utahns in general. All right, next up on the list, this one might not be a secret to most people, but Utah is known for its world-class skiing and snowboarding in places like Park City, Deer Valley, Snowbird, Alta, Snow Basin, and so many other resorts. Utah is one of the greatest places in all of North America, greatest snow on earth, right here just 15 minutes, 20 minutes away from where I am currently right here in my office in Cottonwood Heights. And honestly, I've been to other places and the snow here is drier, it's more powdery, and for that reason alone, it draws millions of visitors each and every year just for the snow sports. All right, next up, Utah is home to one of the largest independent film festivals in the entire world, and that's the Sundance Film Festival. The Sundance Film Festival is held in Park City each and every year. If you're coming here to visit or you're living here, you've got to experience it at least once because there are so many cool little places to go and check out some of the screenings for the Sundance Film Festival. And if you haven't experienced something like this, you've got to check it out. All right, next fun fact is with an average elevation of over 6,000 feet elevation, Utah is the highest elevated state in the entire country in terms of the average elevation of that state, which is kind of funny because one of the new slogans for the state of Utah over the past decade has been Life Elevated, and it's that fact that we are the highest elevation state in the entire country overall that really plays into that slogan. And you'll find that that statement, that slogan, Life Elevated, is on most of our license plates, but it's not just about elevation. It's about raising the bar in terms of our lifestyle in every regard for all the people that choose to live here, because honestly, we're so blessed to live in such a wonderful place. All right, next up, Utah is known for its mighty 5 national parks, and that is Arches National Park, Canyonlands National Park, Bryce Canyon National Park, Zion National Park, and last but not least, Capitol Reef National Park. Now, all of these 5 national parks are located in the southern half of the state, but within just a couple or few hours, you can be at any of these national parks and experience some absolutely unbelievable, otherworldly type experiences and landscapes. These places are amazing. You've got to check them out. All right, next, the state bird in Utah is the California gull. And it's interesting because it is the state bird because it commemorates the gulls saving the Mormon pioneers when they first settled this area from the locust infestation, and those birds came and saved their crops and therefore saved their ability to actually inhabit this land. And that's why that symbol is of a little bit more importance than just what it might appear on the surface level, but that's kind of cool. All right, next, the Great Salt Lake covers just under 1,700 square miles and is the largest saltwater lake in the entire Western Hemisphere. In fact, it's the 3rd largest saltwater lake in the entire world. There are only 2 lakes in other parts of the world that are bigger than this one, and it's huge and honestly a sight to behold. One of my favorite things to do with the Great Salt Lake is to drive out and go over to Antelope Island, where you can see wild buffalo. You can also see all sorts of other wildlife, including antelope and deer and other animals. And it's really cool to experience the sunsets out there. Just make sure that you don't go at certain times of year when certain bugs are hatching in the springtime because they are prominent. They are unbelievable. You have to make sure that you go during the right months. There's only a couple of months where it's really bad. But other than that, the Great Salt Lake is pretty cool to check out. And there's a couple of cool places to go check out around the Great Salt Lake as well. All right, next fun fact is Utah is the 2nd driest state in the nation, and we only receive on average 12 inches of water every single year throughout the state of Utah. That's pretty crazy. And that is precisely why we rely so much on the winter snowpack so that runoff fills up our reservoirs and we have the proper amount of water to sustain life throughout the entire year. And next up, Salt Lake City was the host for the 2002 Winter Olympic Games, and it was a really successful Olympics, despite the controversy and the scandal that happened leading up to the Olympics. But we did experience a really incredible Winter Games in 2002, and it was really crazy because it was the first Olympics following the 9/11, the tragedy that happened in New York City and Washington and elsewhere, where we saw the country really bond and come together. And that Olympic Games here in America was really cool to see. And it appears that Salt Lake City will again host the Winter Games in the year 2034 if everything plays out as expected. It is the preferred host for those games, and it has been announced by the IOC that Salt Lake City is the preferred host for the 2034 games, and it would be really fun to go to those events again in the Winter Games of 2034. And next up, the Utah State Capitol is built out of white granite and is one of the most prominent features and landmarks in the entire state of Utah. It is a sight to behold, and I think it's one of the most beautiful state capitol buildings in the United States. There's probably a handful of others that you could put up there as well, but it's a beautiful building, both inside and out. You've got to go check it out. All right, next up, the official Utah state flower is the Seagull Lily, chosen by early Mormon pioneers, not only for its beauty, but most importantly for its resilience, because to live in this dry, arid climate, it took a lot of resilience for those people to not only make the trek to get here, but also to create a life here in the Salt Lake Valley and elsewhere. And honestly, that's kind of cool. It carries a lot of meaning, both with our statehood as well as the people that live here. Next up, the state of Utah and Salt Lake City has been nicknamed as Silicon Slopes, with a booming tech industry. And I know that the tech industries in many other cities are booming as well, but it is booming here tremendously. And so if that's something that's appealing to you and you're looking for a tech job, Utah might be a wonderful place for you as well. All right, next up, fun fact. Utah has ranked as the best state in the country in terms of unemployment over the last quarter century. When you factor in each and every single year, it's ranked in the top 3 or 4 or 5 in terms of unemployment. Why is that? We are an industrious people here. People here that want to work can almost always find work, and it's also ranked as the #1 job market in the entire country. Next up, just west of Salt Lake City in the West Desert sits the Bonneville Salt Flats. Many people know the Bonneville Salt Flats because of its amazing photograph opportunities, but that salt crust that covers the entire West Desert is used for the fastest cars on the face of the planet. World record land speed records have been set there many times over, and every year there's an event that comes out to the Bonneville Salt Flats with custom race cars built just for speed to break that record yet again. But from my perspective, the Bonneville Salt Flats is just otherworldly. It is one of the coolest places in the world you'll ever experience, and it's kind of fun to see when there's been rain as well, because a little bit of water sits on top of that salt crust and can make for some amazing photos as well, with the background being fascinating mountains, especially when those mountains are capped with snow. All right, next up, this is one you might not know, but Utah is one of the best places in the entire country and the world for finding dinosaur bones. And the state boasts numerous dinosaur fossil sites where you can actually see the bones. For example, at the Dinosaur National Monument, you can actually see the bones being extracted right there in the mountain. So if fossils and dinosaur bones are fascinating to you, Utah might be the best place for you. And next up, the Utah Olympic Park just outside of Park City is still in use today. This Olympic Park was built for the 2002 Winter Games that we just talked about earlier, but unlike most Olympic cities, all of our venues have been continually used since the games, so they're still being maintained and utilized for purposes for training facilities, as well as other recreational activities, bobsledding, zip lining, you name it. It's really cool. It's a cool place to go. And it's just about 20 minutes from Salt Lake City and just a few minutes outside of Park City. Pretty cool. All right, next up on the list, the Utah Jazz, our one and only, at least for now, major sports team here in the NBA. We are passionate fans here in the state of Utah of our NBA team, the Utah Jazz, but the Jazz name doesn't quite fit what we are here in Utah, so why do we have it? Well, the Jazz moved here to Utah from New Orleans in 1979, and it makes sense that it was the New Orleans Jazz, but when we brought the team here to Utah, the Jazz name just stuck. We never changed it, and now it's too late. The Jazz have become synonymous with Utah culture. We could never change the name at this point, but it is just a little bit odd to think of Utah and Jazz in the same sentence. But honestly, in terms of sports, I'm a huge fan and I've grown up a Jazz fan, so I could not imagine ever changing that name at this point. All right, moving on. This one is kind of interesting because most people don't realize this, but Utah has a diverse cultural heritage with Mormon pioneers coming from the eastern United States, as well as many Native American tribes and Hispanic settlers. Utah has a little more diversity than most people realize. All right, now going to downtown Salt Lake City is our #1 most visited site in the entire state of Utah, and that is the Salt Lake Temple. And fun fact, this temple took 40 years to build from 1853 up until 1893. In fact, that building is under construction right now and has been for the last, I believe, 4 years for a major renovation and seismic upgrade to make sure that that building will last forever. All right, we're getting close to the end. Utah is home to the largest rock span in the entire world. We call these arches here in the state of Utah, and that is Rainbow Bridge, located near Lake Powell in southern Utah. This Rainbow Bridge, this is the most iconic image of the state of Utah and is used all over the world to depict our beautiful landscape in the state of Utah. In fact, it's even on many of our license plates, and if you have the opportunity to go hike up to Rainbow Bridge, it is so worth it. You've got to check it out. And I want to touch on one more really cool fun fact about the state of Utah, and that is Utah is home to the very first transcontinental railroad, where the first railroad crossed the entire North American continent in the United States of America, and they connected right here, just north of Salt Lake City, in a place called Promontory Summit in northern Utah, just north of Salt Lake City, on May 10th, 1869. And there's a really cool place to go visit. They're actually adding another monument. I think it's going to be a national monument, which is kind of cool. But those are 25 fun facts about the state of Utah. And so if you're considering visiting or even making the move to Utah, these are things worth noting. These are things you're going to want to check out. And I'm always here to guide anyone that has any questions. Please drop a comment and consider subscribing, as it helps me reach more people. I would love it if you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment of what you think you would like to see the most here in the state of Utah, based on your experiences or based on what you see online or read. And with that said, I would love to be your real estate resource of choice. If you're making that move, please reach out to me. You can find my information in the description below or in the pinned comment on this and every video. And until the next video, thanks.